The desert wind carried the scent of burning oil and distant gunpowder, as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison crouched behind the crumbling wall of what had once been a school. His team of 6 Navy SEALs had been tracking a high-value target through the maze of abandoned buildings in the Syrian desert for 3 days. The intelligence had been solid, or so they thought. Abdul Rashid Hassan, a key figure in the regional arms trafficking network, was supposed to be hiding in this forgotten village that the war had left like a skeleton in the sand. Morrison wiped the sweat from his brow and checked his watch. So 347 hours. The pre-dawn darkness would give them cover for another hour before the sun turned their black tactical gear into a liability. Through his night vision goggles, everything appeared in shades of green and gray. The village looked empty, but Morrison had learned long ago that appearances in this part of the world could be deadly deceptive. His earpiece crackled softly. Alpha 1, this is Alpha 3. I've got movement in the building 2 clicks northeast of your position. The voice belonged to Petty Officer First Class Danny Rodriguez, his sniper who was positioned on a hill overlooking the village. Morrison hand-signaled to his team. Petty Officer Mike Chen, their demolitions expert, was checking the perimeter of a building that intelligence suggested might house Hassan's operation. Petty Officer Tom Bradley was covering their 6, while Petty Officer James Wright monitored their communications. The youngest member of the team, Petty Officer Marcus Johnson, was barely 22 but had already proven himself in 2 previous deployments. They had been in country for 6 weeks, part of a larger operation to disrupt the flow of weapons that were finding their way into the hands of various militant groups. Hassan wasn't just a small-time dealer. According to CIA intelligence, he was the middleman between state sponsors and terrorist organizations, moving everything from assault rifles to surface-to-air missiles. Morrison studied the building Rodriguez had identified. It was a 2-story structure with most of its windows blown out. The walls were pockmarked with bullet holes and part of the roof had collapsed. It looked like every other war-torn building in the area, which made it perfect for hiding in plain sight. The mission parameters were clear. Locate Hassan, gather intelligence on his network, and if possible, extract him for interrogation. They were authorized to use deadly force if necessary, but the preference was to take him alive. Dead men don't reveal the locations of weapon caches or the names of their contacts. As Morrison was about to signal his team to move closer to the target building, he heard something that made his blood run cold. It wasn't the sound itself that worried him, but rather what it represented. Diesel engines, multiple vehicles moving through the desert at high speed. The sound was getting closer, and it wasn't coming from the direction of their extraction point. Through his night vision, Morrison could see lights in the distance, still several kilometers away but approaching fast. His team hadn't called for backup, and there were no friendly forces operating in this sector. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. They had walked into a trap. Alpha Team, we've got company incoming from the south, Morrison whispered into his microphone. Rodriguez, what do you see from your position? Alpha 1, I count at least 4 vehicles, possibly more. They're moving in a search pattern like they know we're here. Morrison's mind raced through the possibilities. Their mission had been classified, known only to a handful of people back at headquarters. The possibility of a leak was something every operator dreaded, but it was becoming increasingly likely that someone had sold them out. Chen's voice came through the comm system, urgent but controlled. Alpha 1, I'm seeing armed personnel moving through the buildings to our east. They're not local militia. These guys have military training and proper equipment. The trap was closing around them. Morrison had to make a decision quickly. They could try to fight their way out, but they were outnumbered and in unfamiliar terrain. They could try to hide and wait for the search to pass, but if Hassan's people had been expecting them, they would know where to look. All units, fall back to Rally Point Bravo, Morrison ordered. Rally Point Bravo was a predetermined location about half a kilometer from their current position, near the remains of an old water treatment facility. As the team began to move, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they were being herded rather than escaping. Every route that seemed open led them in the same general direction, away from their original extraction point and toward the deeper desert. The diesel engines were getting louder now, and Morrison could see the silhouettes of armed trucks moving between the buildings. Whoever was hunting them had resources and coordination. This wasn't a random encounter with local bandits. This was a professional military operation. Rodriguez was the last to fall back from his sniper position. providing overwatch as the team moved through the ruins. Alpha 1, I'm seeing at least 30 hostiles, maybe more. They've got night vision and thermal imaging equipment. These aren't your average insurgents. As they reached Rally Point Bravo, Morrison realized that their communication equipment was being jammed. They could still talk to each other over short distances, but their satellite communication link back to headquarters was completely blocked. They were truly on their own. The water treatment facility offered some cover, but it wouldn't hold against a determined assault. Morrison needed to think beyond just surviving the next few hours. They needed a plan to get out of the area entirely, and with their communications down, that meant reaching one of their backup extraction points without any support. As the first light of dawn began to appear on the horizon, Morrison could see the full scope of what they were facing. The vehicles that had been pursuing them had formed a perimeter around their general area. Professional soldiers were moving through the ruins in coordinated sweeps. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Jake Morrison and his 5 men were about to face the fight of their lives. The hunter had become the hunted, and the desert that had been their ally in previous operations was about to become their prison. What they didn't know was that their salvation would come from the most unexpected source, and that their true ordeal was just beginning. The concrete walls of the water treatment facility provided little comfort as Morrison watched the enemy forces tighten their noose. Through the broken windows, he could see armed men moving with military precision, their black uniforms and tactical equipment indicating this was no ragtag militia operation. Someone with serious resources wanted them captured, and Morrison was beginning to suspect they knew exactly who that someone was. Chen had set up a defensive position near the main entrance, his rifle trained on the approach road. "Skipper, we've got movement on all sides now. They're not rushing us, just taking their time and making sure we can't slip out." The methodical approach confirmed Morrison's worst fears. These weren't insurgents looking for a quick firefight. They wanted his team alive, which meant they had specific plans for them. In this part of the world, being captured alive often meant a very public and very painful death, broadcast for propaganda purposes. Bradley was monitoring their remaining equipment when he discovered something that made the situation even worse. "Sir, our GPS units are showing false readings. They've got some kind of electronic warfare capability running. We're not just jammed. We're being actively deceived about our location." Right, their communications specialist was frantically trying different frequencies and backup systems. "All military frequencies are being jammed, but I'm picking up some civilian radio traffic. Local frequencies are still working, but I don't know if that helps us." Morrison was considering their limited options when Johnson, who had been watching the western approach, suddenly ducked down. "Contact!" 3 tangos moving up the drainage canal. "They're trying to get behind us." The facility's design worked both for and against them. The thick concrete walls provided excellent protection from small arms fire, but there were multiple entrances, and the building was too large for 6 men to defend effectively. Morrison realized they needed to consolidate their position. "Everyone fall back to the control room," he ordered. The control room was in the center of the building with only 2 entrances and no windows. It would be easier to defend, but it would also trap them if the enemy decided to use heavier weapons or explosives. As they moved through the facility, Morrison noticed something odd about the enemy's behavior. They were being very careful not to damage the building's infrastructure. Whoever was in charge was making sure his team could be taken alive and the facility could still be used afterward. Rodriguez had managed to find a position in the control room that gave him a limited view of the outside through a ventilation grate. "Skipper, I can see someone in charge out there." Tall guy in a different uniform, giving orders. "He's got satellite communication equipment." The mention of satellite communications reminded Morrison of something crucial. Their mission briefing had included information about Hassan's connections to foreign intelligence services. If Hassan was working with state actors, they would have access to military-grade equipment and training. Chen was checking his ammunition when he made an observation that changed everything. "Sir, look at this." He held up a piece of equipment he had found near the entrance. "This is a directional microphone, professional grade. They've been listening to us." Morrison examined the device. It was sophisticated equipment, the kind used by intelligence agencies for surveillance operations. Whoever had set this trap had been planning it for a long time and had been monitoring their communications from the beginning. The realization that their Mission had been compromised from the start was devastating, but it also provided valuable information. If the enemy had been listening to their communications, they knew about the team's capabilities, their equipment, and their standard operating procedures. But they might not know about the emergency protocols that were never discussed over radio. Wright suddenly looked up from his radio equipment with an expression of surprise. "Sir, I'm picking up something on the local emergency frequency." It's a woman's voice, and she's speaking English. She says she knows we're here and wants to help. Morrison's first instinct was suspicion. In a situation where they had walked into an elaborate trap, a mysterious voice offering help seemed like another layer of deception. But as he listened to Wright relay the message, something about it felt different. The woman's voice was calm and professional. She wasn't making dramatic promises or using the kind of propaganda language they might expect from their enemies. Instead, she was providing specific tactical information about the forces surrounding them. Information that proved to be accurate when Chen confirmed it through visual observation. "She says there are 38 hostiles in total," Wright reported. 4 vehicles, including 1 command vehicle with jamming equipment. "She's giving us their exact positions." Bradley verified the information by carefully observing through different vantage points in the control room. "The positions she's calling out are dead accurate. Whoever this woman is, she's got eyes on the situation." Morrison had to make a decision. Every minute they stayed in the facility, their situation became more precarious. The enemy was clearly in no hurry, which suggested they were confident in their ability to take the team whenever they chose. But it also meant they had time to bring in additional resources or heavier weapons. The woman's voice came through again, this time with more urgency. Wright translated her words carefully. "She says they're planning to use gas to force us out. Some kind of non-lethal agent that will incapacitate us. She estimates we have about 20 minutes before they deploy it." Chen looked at Morrison with growing concern. "Skipper, if they gas us, we're done. Our masks will only protect us for so long in an enclosed space like this." Morrison realized they were running out of options. They could try to fight their way out, but the odds were heavily against them. They could wait and hope for rescue. But with their communications down, no one knew their exact location or situation. Or they could trust the mysterious woman who seemed to know more about their situation than they did. The decision was made when Rodriguez spotted movement near the building's ventilation system. "Sir, they're setting something up near the air intakes. Looks like they're preparing to pump something into the building." Morrison grabbed Wright's radio handset. It was time to take a calculated risk. "Unknown caller, this is the unit you've been monitoring. We need to know who you are and what kind of help you can provide." The response came immediately, and what the woman said next would change everything about their situation. Her words revealed not only who she was, but why she was in a position to help them and what she was willing to risk to make sure they got out of the desert alive. The voice that came through Wright's radio was steady and professional, with a slight accent that Morrison couldn't immediately place. "My name is Dr. Sarah Kassem. I'm a Syrian intelligence officer who has been working undercover to expose Hassan's network. The men surrounding you are not his people. They work for my government, but they've been compromised." Morrison exchanged glances with his team. A Syrian intelligence officer helping American Special Forces was not something any of them had expected. But the information she had provided so far had been accurate, and they were rapidly running out of alternatives. "Dr. Kassem, how do we know you're telling us the truth?" Morrison asked into the radio. "Because in about 15 minutes those men are going to pump Kolokol 1 into your building. It's a Russian-made incapacitating agent. Your gas masks will protect you for maybe 10 minutes before you start losing consciousness. Then they will take you alive, and you will disappear into a system that your government cannot reach." Chen looked up sharply at the mention of Kolokol 1. As the team's chemical warfare specialist, he knew the agent's reputation. "Skipper, she's right about the gas. The Russians used it in the Moscow theater siege. It's designed to incapacitate without killing, but it's dangerous in enclosed spaces." Dr. Kassem's voice continued through the radio. "I have been tracking Hassan's operation for 8 months. My superiors believe I am helping him, but I have been documenting his connections to foreign arms dealers and state sponsors. What you stumbled into tonight was not Hassan's operation, it was mine." Morrison was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. "You're saying Hassan works for Syrian intelligence?" "Hassan works for whoever pays him the most. Sometimes that is my government, sometimes it is others. Tonight he was supposed to be meeting with representatives from a Russian arms manufacturer. I was here to document that meeting and gather evidence of illegal weapons transfers. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together. Morrison realized that both his team and Dr. Kassem had been operating in the same area with similar objectives, but neither had known about the other's presence. Rodriguez suddenly interrupted their conversation. "Skipper, they're moving the equipment into position at the ventilation intakes. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they start the gas." Dr. Kassem seemed to hear Rodriguez's report through the radio. "Listen carefully. I can create a distraction that will draw most of the men away from your building, but you will have only a small window to escape. There is a drainage tunnel that runs underneath the facility. It connects to the old sewage system that leads out of the village." Wright was frantically taking notes as Dr. Kassem provided detailed directions. "The tunnel entrance is in the basement of your building, behind the main water pumps. It's partially flooded but passable. The tunnel runs northeast for approximately 2 kilometers before it reaches an outlet near the main road." Morrison had to make a decision quickly. Trusting Dr. Kassem meant putting his team's lives in the hands of a foreign intelligence officer whose true loyalties they couldn't verify. But staying meant certain capture and probable death. "What kind of distraction are you planning?" Morrison asked. "Hassan's real meeting is taking place 3 kilometers south of your position. I'm going to inform the Russian representatives that Syrian government forces are about to raid their location. The chaos that follows will require most of the men currently surrounding you to respond." Chen had found the basement access and was reporting back to Morrison. "Sir, I found the pumps she mentioned. There's definitely a tunnel entrance, but it's been sealed with concrete blocks. I can blast through it, but the explosion will let everyone know where we went." Dr. Kassem anticipated their concern. "The explosion will be covered by a larger one. I have explosive charges placed at Hassan's meeting location. When I detonate them, your smaller explosion will not be noticed." Bradley was studying the building's layout on his tactical computer. "Skipper, if her information is correct, this drainage system was built during the Soviet era. It was designed to handle industrial waste from the treatment facility. The tunnels should be large enough for us to move through quickly." Johnson had been monitoring the enemy positions and reported increased activity. "Sir, they're definitely preparing something at the air intakes. I can see men in protective gear getting ready to deploy some kind of equipment." Morrison realized they were out of time for debate. "Dr. Kassem, if we do this, what happens to you?" "That is my concern, not yours. Your mission was to gather intelligence on Hassan's network. I can provide you with that intelligence, but only if you survive to receive it. Hassan's operation is much larger than your government realizes, and it threatens more than just American interests." The revelation that Dr. Kassem had intelligence beyond what his team had been sent to collect added another layer of complexity to their situation. Morrison knew that if they could get that information back to their handlers, it might justify the risks they were taking. Wright was monitoring multiple radio frequencies when he picked up something that confirmed Dr. Kassem's credibility. "Sir, I'm hearing Arabic communications from the direction she said Hassan's meeting was taking place. Multiple vehicles are moving toward that location." Chen had finished his assessment of the tunnel entrance. "I can blow through this concrete in about 2 minutes once we're ready to go. But we need to move fast once it's open. If that tunnel is partially flooded like she said, we'll be moving slowly and we'll be vulnerable." Morrison made his decision. "Dr. Kassem, we're going to trust you. Tell us exactly when to expect your distraction and we'll be ready to move. Give me exactly 7 minutes from now. I need to get into position and prepare the charges. When you hear the explosion to the south, that's your signal. Blow your entrance and move into the tunnel as quickly as possible." Rodriguez had been watching the enemy positions when he noticed something that would complicate their escape. "Skipper, they've got guards posted at regular intervals around the perimeter. Even with a distraction, some of them might stay in position." Dr. Kassem's voice came through the radio one final time before she signed off. "The guards you see are not the only threat. Hassan has informants throughout the area. If you are captured or killed, those informants will disappear and my 8 months of work will be worthless. We succeed together, or we fail together." As Morrison's team prepared for what might be their only chance at escape, none of them realized that Dr. Kassem's true motivations went far beyond what she had revealed. The intelligence she possessed could reshape their understanding of the entire regional conflict. But first, they all had to survive the next hour. The basement of the water treatment facility smelled of rust and decay. Chen had positioned his explosive charges against the concrete block sealing the tunnel entrance, while the rest of the team prepared for what could be their final escape attempt. Morrison checked his watch. 3 minutes until Dr. Kassim's promised distraction. Above them, they could hear the muffled sounds of their captors preparing the gas deployment. Through the building's structure, the voices carried with an urgency that suggested the operation was moving into its final phase. Morrison knew that once the gas started flowing, they would have very little time before the incapacitating effects began. Wright was monitoring both the local frequencies and the enemy communications when he picked up something unexpected. "Sir, I'm hearing chatter about additional units being called to a location south of here. Sounds like Dr. Kassim's distraction is already working." Rodriguez had found a position where he could observe both the tunnel entrance and the basement's access points. "Skipper, if this goes sideways and we get trapped in that tunnel, we'll be sitting ducks. No room to maneuver, no cover, and nowhere to go but forward." Morrison understood the risks, but he also understood that staying meant certain capture. "Johnson, what's our ammunition status?" "We've got enough for a running firefight, but not enough for a prolonged engagement. If we run into resistance in the tunnel, we'll need to punch through it quickly." Chen was making final adjustments to his charges when he discovered something that changed their tactical situation. "Sir, this tunnel isn't just a drainage system. Look at these markings on the walls. This was part of a military installation. The Soviets built this as an underground supply route, the revelation that they were dealing with a purpose-built, military tunnel rather than simple drainage meant the passage would be more substantial than they had expected, but it also meant it might be monitored or defended. Bradley was studying his maps when he made another discovery. If this tunnel system connects to the Soviet-era installations, it might not just lead to one exit. These facilities typically had multiple escape routes. Morrison's tactical mind began working through the implications. Multiple exits meant multiple options, but it also meant multiple points where they could be ambushed if their enemies knew about the tunnel system. The sound of a distant explosion suddenly echoed through the building, followed immediately by the chatter of automatic weapons fire. Dr. Kassim had kept her promise. Morrison could hear shouts from above as their captors responded to the emergency at Hassan's meeting location. "That's our signal," Morrison said quietly. "Chen, blow it." The explosion was smaller than expected, designed more to shatter concrete than to destroy the entire entrance. As the dust cleared, they could see that Chen had succeeded in creating an opening large enough for them to pass through, though they would need to move single file. Wright went first, carrying their communication equipment and serving as their link to Dr. Kassim, if she was still able to communicate. The tunnel was indeed partially flooded, with water reaching up to their knees in some places. The current suggested the water was flowing toward their intended exit. As they moved through the tunnel, Morrison realized that Dr. Kassim had understated the challenges they would face. The tunnel was in poor condition, with sections where the ceiling had partially collapsed and others where the water was deeper than expected. Their progress was slower than anticipated. Rodriguez, bringing up the rear, reported that he could still hear activity in the building they had left behind. "Sounds like they're still deploying the gas even though we're gone. They might not realize we've escaped yet." The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever. But Wright's GPS unit, now that they were underground and away from the jamming, was showing they were making progress toward the northeast. According to Dr. Kassim's directions, they should reach the main road in approximately 2 kilometers. Chen, who was second in line, suddenly stopped. "Sir, we've got a problem. The tunnel splits ahead and there's no indication which way leads to the exit." Morrison moved up to examine the junction. Both passages appeared to be the same size and both had water flowing through them. There were no markings or signs to indicate which was the correct route. Wright tried to raise Dr. Kassim on the radio, but received no response. Either her equipment was no longer working, or she was no longer in a position to communicate. They were on their own for this decision. Johnson noticed something that provided a clue. "Sir, the water flow is stronger in the left passage. If this system was designed to drain away from the facility, the main flow should lead to the primary exit." Morrison made the decision to follow the stronger current. As they continued through the left passage, the tunnel began to improve. The walls were in better condition, and there were fewer obstacles. It appeared they had chosen correctly, After what felt like hours but was actually only 45 minutes, they began to see natural light ahead. The tunnel was approaching its exit and they could hear the sounds of the desert wind. But as they got closer to the opening, they realized they faced a new challenge. Bradley, who had moved ahead to scout the exit, returned with concerning news. "Sir, the exit is visible from the main road and there's a vehicle parked about 200 meters away. I can't tell if it's friendly or hostile, but someone is definitely watching this location." Morrison realized they might be walking into another trap. If Dr. Kassim's loyalty was questionable, she could have directed them to an exit that was being monitored by hostile forces. But if the vehicle belonged to friendlies, approaching cautiously might cause them to miss their extraction opportunity. Rodriguez had found a position where he could observe the vehicle through the tunnel opening. It's a civilian car, not military. There's one person inside, appears to be a woman. The description matched what they might expect if Dr. Kassim had managed to reach the exit point ahead of them, but it could also be a trap using someone who matched her general description. Wright was able to pick up a weak signal on the radio frequency Dr. Kassim had been using. "Sir, I'm getting something, but it's breaking up. Sounds like she's trying to communicate, but the signal is very weak." Morrison faced another critical decision. They could wait in the tunnel and try to establish better communication, but that would give their original captors more time to discover their escape route. They could approach the vehicle cautiously, but that would expose them if it was a trap, for they could try to find an alternate exit from the tunnel system. As Morrison was weighing their options, Chen made an observation that would determine their next move. "Skipper, look at the water flow here at the exit. It's backing up, which means something is blocking the normal drainage. If we stay here much longer, this tunnel could flood completely." The rising water level in the tunnel meant they needed to exit soon, regardless of what waited for them outside. Morrison realized that Dr. Kassim had not just saved their lives by helping them escape. She had also put them in a position where they would have to trust her completely to survive. The water level in the tunnel was rising faster than Morrison had anticipated. What had started as knee-deep flooding was now approaching waist level, and the current was becoming stronger. They had no choice but to exit, regardless of what waited for them outside. Morrison signaled for the team to prepare for immediate action. "Rodriguez, you're our overwatch. Find a position where you can cover our exit. Everyone else be ready to move fast if this goes bad." As they approached the tunnel opening, Wright managed to establish clearer radio contact. The voice that came through was definitely Dr. Kassim's, and she sounded urgent. "American unit, you need to exit now. Hassan's men have discovered your escape route and are moving toward your location. I am in the vehicle, you can see, but we have very little time." Morrison made the decision to trust her. "Move out, but stay ready for contact." They emerged from the tunnel into the pre-dawn darkness to find Dr. Kassim standing beside a battered Toyota sedan. She was not what Morrison had expected. A woman in her mid-30s wearing civilian clothes that had seen better days. She looked more like a university professor than an intelligence officer. "Quickly," she said in accented but clear English, "your extraction point has been compromised. Hassan's network extends further than you realized, and they have people watching all the standard routes your military uses in this region." Chen was scanning the surrounding area for threats when he noticed something that concerned him. "Sir, there are fresh tire tracks here that don't match this vehicle. Someone else has been here recently." Dr. Kassim nodded grimly. "Hassan's advance scouts. They've been checking all possible exit points from the tunnel system. We are perhaps 10 minutes ahead of them, no more." Morrison realized that their situation had not improved significantly. They had escaped one trap only to find themselves in a larger game of cat and mouse, with an enemy who seemed to know their capabilities and procedures better than they should. "Dr. Kassim, you mentioned intelligence about Hassan's network. What exactly are we dealing with here?" She gestured for them to get into and around the vehicle while she explained. "Hassan is not just an arms dealer. He is part of a larger network that includes intelligence officers from at least 3 countries. Military personnel who have been turned, and business leaders who use legitimate companies to move weapons and funding." Johnson was monitoring their radio equipment when he picked up communications that confirmed Dr. Kassim's warning. "Sir, I'm hearing multiple vehicles moving in our direction. They're coordinating a search pattern that suggests they know about the tunnel exit." Dr. Kassim started the vehicle and began driving away from the main road, taking what appeared to be an old goat path that led deeper into the desert. Your government thinks Hassan's network is primarily focused on regional conflicts, but the truth is much worse. They are preparing to move advanced weapon systems to groups that plan to use them against Western targets. Morrison was beginning to understand why Dr. Qasim had risked so much to help them. You're not just gathering intelligence for Syrian interests. You're trying to prevent a much larger attack. My country may have many disagreements with yours, but we both have an interest in preventing certain groups from acquiring weapons that could destabilize the entire region. Hassan's current operation involves surface-to-air missiles that could bring down civilian aircraft. Wright was trying to establish communication with their headquarters when he discovered that their situation was even more complicated than they had realized. Sir, our satellite communication system is picking up encrypted traffic that matches patterns used by our own intelligence services. Someone on our side is coordinating with the people, hunting us. The revelation that there might be a traitor within, their own intelligence community explained how their mission had been compromised from the beginning. Morrison realized that Dr. Qasim might be their only reliable ally in getting out of the country alive. Bradley was studying their route when he made an observation that would change their immediate plans. We're heading toward the border with Iraq. If Dr. Qasim is leading us out of Syria, we might be able to reach friendly territory. Dr. Qasim shook her head. The border is too heavily monitored, and Hassan's people have contacts on both sides. But there is another option. I have been working with a group of Kurdish fighters who operate in this region. They have been fighting Hassan's network for months, and they have ways of moving people safely out of the area. Rodriguez was watching their back trail when he spotted the dust clouds that indicated pursuit. We've got company coming up fast. Multiple vehicles, and they're gaining on us. The sedan was not built for high-speed desert driving, and Morrison could see that they would not be able to outrun their pursuers for long. They needed either a place to make a stand or an alternative means of escape. Dr. Qasim seemed to read his thoughts. There is a Kurdish checkpoint approximately 15 kilometers ahead. If we can reach it, they will provide protection. But the road between here and there is controlled by Hassan's people. Chen was assessing their tactical situation when he realized they had one advantage their pursuers might not expect. Sir, we've still got our demolition charges. If we can find a choke point, we might be able to slow them down. Morrison looked at the terrain ahead of them. The desert was relatively flat, but there were rocky outcroppings that could provide cover and potentially create bottlenecks for pursuing vehicles. Dr. Qasim pointed to a formation of rocks about 3 kilometers ahead. Those rocks mark the entrance to a canyon. It is the only road through the hills for many kilometers. If your explosives expert can create a rock slide, it would block pursuit long enough for us to reach the Kurdish position. Johnson was monitoring their pursuers when he reported that the situation was getting worse. Sir, they're not just following us. They're trying to get ahead of us. I count at least 2 groups, one following and one trying to cut us off. Morrison realized they were running out of options. The Kurdish checkpoint might provide safety, but only if they could reach it before being surrounded. Chen's demolition plan might work, but it would require precise timing and more luck than Morrison was comfortable betting their lives on. As they approached the rocky canyon that Dr. Qasim had indicated, Morrison had to make another critical decision. They could try to fight their way through whatever ambush might be waiting in the canyon. They could attempt Chen's demolition plan to block their pursuers, or they could try to find a completely different route that might take them further from safety but away from immediate danger. The decision was made for them when Wright picked up a radio transmission that revealed the true scope of the trap closing around them. What he heard would force Morrison to reconsider everything they thought they knew about their mission and Dr. Qasim's real motivations for helping them escape. Wright's face went pale as he listened to the intercepted transmission. Sir, you need to hear this. The voice giving coordinates for our intercept is American. Someone from our own intelligence community is directing the hunt for us. Morrison felt his blood run cold. The possibility of a traitor in their organization was one thing, but hearing an American voice actively coordinating their capture was something else entirely. Dr. Qasim glanced at him with an expression that suggested she had suspected this all along. Your government has people who believe Hassan's network can be turned and used for American interests, she said grimly. They think they can control him, use his connections for intelligence gathering. They are wrong, but they will sacrifice your team to protect their operation. The canyon ahead looked increasingly like a trap, but the pursuing vehicles were getting closer. Morrison could see dust clouds from at least 3 different directions, indicating that Hassan's people had successfully surrounded their general area. Rodriguez was scanning the canyon entrance with his scope when he spotted something that confirmed their worst fears. "Sir, there are positions prepared in those rocks. This isn't a natural choke point. It's a deliberate ambush site." Dr. Qasim suddenly turned the vehicle away from the canyon, heading toward what appeared to be empty desert. "There is another way, but it is dangerous." During the Soviet period, this area was used for military exercises. There are underground bunkers connected by tunnels. Most have been forgotten, but I know the locations. Chen was studying their immediate tactical situation when he made a crucial observation. "The pursuing vehicles are staying back just enough to hurt us rather than engage. They definitely want us alive, which gives us some room to maneuver." Morrison realized that their captors' desire to take them alive was both an advantage and a disadvantage. It meant they wouldn't be hit with overwhelming firepower, but it also meant their enemies were confident they could control the situation. Dr. Qasim drove the sedan across increasingly rough terrain toward what looked like a small hill. As they got closer, Morrison could see that it was actually a camouflaged entrance to an underground facility. Soviet ammunition depot. Abandoned since 1987, but the tunnels are still intact. Johnson was monitoring their communications when he picked up something that revealed the true complexity of their situation. "Sir, Hassan isn't just coordinating with our traitor." I'm hearing Russian, Chinese, and Iranian communications all focused on our location. "This is bigger than just arms dealing." As they reached the bunker entrance, Dr. Qasim stopped the vehicle and began removing what appeared to be well-placed camouflage materials. "I have been using this facility as my operational base for 6 months. Everything I have learned about Hassan's network is documented here." Morrison realized that Dr. Qasim had not just stumbled upon their situation. She had been preparing for something like this, and their rescue might be part of a larger plan she had been developing. Inside the bunker, Morrison's team found themselves in a surprisingly well-equipped facility. Dr. Qasim had clearly been using it as more than just a hiding place. There were communication equipment, intelligence documents, and what appeared to be evidence files containing photographs and recordings. Wright immediately went to work on the communication equipment, while Dr. Qasim began pulling files from a secure cabinet. Hassan's network is planning something called Operation Desert Bloom. It involves simultaneous attacks on civilian targets in 7 different countries, using weapons that were supposedly destroyed under international treaties. Bradley was examining the intelligence materials when he made a discovery that explained why so many different countries were involved in hunting them. "Sir, this isn't just about terrorism. Hassan's network is being used to destabilize currency markets, manipulate oil prices, and create regional conflicts that benefit specific economic interests." Morrison began to understand the scope of what they had stumbled into. Their mission to capture a regional arms dealer had actually uncovered an international conspiracy that threatened global stability. Dr. Qasim was connecting her computer to Wright's communication system when she revealed the most crucial information. "The American who has been directing the hunt for you is Deputy Director Marcus Webb of the CIA. He believes he can control Hassan's network for American strategic interests. What he does not know is that Hassan has been feeding him false information while preparing to eliminate everyone who knows about Operation Desert Bloom." Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the bunker's perimeter security, reported that their pursuers had discovered the entrance. "We've got movement outside. They found us, but they're not approaching directly. Looks like they're setting up a perimeter." Morrison realized they were trapped again, but this time they had something their enemies wanted desperately. Dr. Qasim's intelligence files contained enough evidence to expose the entire conspiracy, but only if they could get that information to people who could act on it without being compromised. Chen had been examining the bunker's construction when he found something that could change everything. "Sir, this facility has a secondary exit that connects to a communications bunker about 2 kilometers away. The tunnel is small, but we could move through it." Dr. Qasim nodded. "The communications bunker has equipment that can reach satellites directly, bypassing all terrestrial communications that might be monitored. If we can reach it, we can transmit this intelligence to multiple intelligence agencies simultaneously." "Right. was working frantically to establish secure communications when he succeeded in reaching a frequency that connected them directly to the Pentagon. "Sir, I've got a secure line to SOCOM headquarters. They're asking for authentication codes." Morrison realized this was their chance to get the intelligence out, but it would also reveal their location to anyone monitoring Pentagon communications. They would need to transmit the information quickly and then escape before hostile forces could respond. As Dr. Qasim prepared to transmit her intelligence files, she revealed one final piece of information that would change everything. Operation Desert Bloom is not planned for the future. It begins tonight at midnight, coordinated with Hassan's meeting that was supposed to eliminate all of us. Your Deputy Director Webb thinks he is attending a briefing, but he is actually walking into his own execution. Morrison checked his watch. It was 11:47 p.m. They had 13 minutes to get Dr. Qasim's intelligence to someone who could stop the attacks, save Deputy Director Webb from his own mistakes, and somehow escape from the underground bunker that was rapidly becoming their final battleground. The sound of explosives echoing through the bunker announced that Hassan's people had decided they were tired of waiting. The final confrontation that would determine the fate of Operation Desert Bloom was about to begin, and Morrison's team found themselves at the center of an international crisis that none of them had seen coming.